Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Stedman podcast. We are so excited to be here today and be chatting in your ears. Hopefully it is a pleasant sound and not a buzzsaw sound. Buzzsaw because, we are out of Halloween. We're now into November, so the month of Thanksgiving. So, Micah, what are you thankful for this month?
And I've been going through some stuff recently, so just thankful for another day of life. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just
man.
simple as that may sound. Every day is a blessing, is what I've been telling myself.
Yeah, and I think sometimes just simplicity is always better than trying to think of being thankful for these big exaggerating things, because at the end of the day, just waking up and just participating in life and having new experiences is a blessing. I'm thankful for that. So today, last month in October is usually considered Pastor Appreciation Month, or some people call it Pastor Appreciation Day, where they designate a day to honor their pastoral staff. So today, Mike and I are going to be talking about pastoral appreciation and kind of what it is, and just kind of some of the things that people do, or maybe some people don't do, that they should do, to kind of show caring for their ministers. But before we jump into that, stories gone wild, Micah, do you have a story for us?
Um, it's every week because I forget. I don't know why I forget it because we do it every single week. Do you have one? I'm going to think about it.
Yeah, I do have one. So, um, what are your thoughts on haunted houses, Micah?
I'm not big on Halloween, so I mean, I
You're
could
not
care
big on
less.
Halloween.
I don't.
So,
They don't offend me or anything. I could just care less, though.
yeah. So it was interesting because part of me was like, there's a couple of my teens who wanted to do like a haunted house, some of my older high schoolers. And I'm thinking, okay. So there's that one part of me that says, okay, yeah, let's do it. That'd be fun to do because I like Halloween. And I haven't done a haunted house since I was a teen. So yeah, let's do it. At the same time, it's like, well, this is a church event. It should churches be participating? Because again, should I even be doing this? But then I'm thinking, but wait a minute, I'm not in a very uber conservative evangelical church. I'm kind of in a more I would say I'm
Progressive,
kind of more in a moderate church in some
moderate,
ways.
progressive.
Moderate, maybe. I mean, I think there's some things where they're very conservative about things, and there's some things where they're very progressive about things. So I always kind of see it's kind of in the middle, I guess, depending on who you talk to, depends on where that pendulum is within the church. Which, ironically, we got in trouble this week because, for those of you who don't know, in Ohio, there's this big issue that we're voting on. Um, issue one, which is focusing on topics like abortion and women reproductive rights and all this stuff. And I've been seeing advertising out the wazoo. Like I think like yesterday was the first time I saw something about issue two, which I had no clue there was an issue two. I knew there was like an issue one and an issue 17 about the school, about the libraries, but really issue
Issue
one,
two.
issue one, issue one. Issue two has to do with procedures for cops when they pull people over, and then there's some other law enforcement things. Like I just saw like a quick thing, I'm like, oh, I didn't really catch it because I was surprised that I was seeing something that wasn't issue one, so I have to go back and really look at what issue two is. But it's like it has something to do with cops and pulling over. Then they start talking about drugs and gummies. Like that was the commercial I saw. So I'm like, okay, like what does pulling someone over and gummy drugs have to do with anything? But somebody, because outside the church we have this big like green space outside right next to Broad Street, which goes right into the city of Columbus. And separating Broad Street's like one of those medians that they have trees and some grass. Well, someone put a vote no for issue one thing right outside the church, but it wasn't in our property. It was in that median, which technically that's government property, so that's illegal. You can't put anything out there. But because it was in front of the church, people thought it was the church putting a sign out. And the church secretary comes into work and had a bunch of messages of people getting angry that we were taking a political stance on something, or the church taking a political stance. And we kept saying, No, that's not us. That's in the median, and that's government property, and it's illegal, and it's been taken. So we had to go over there and take it down because people thought it was us who put it out there, and it wasn't. But I feel like that's been a thing, like people just pulling up signs, people like putting up signs and then someone taking them down because they don't like what it says. So that's been a new phenomenon, which is interesting. But that has nothing to do with my story. So we decided to go to this haunted house, and I had a couple of teens that went with me, and oh my gosh, the detail was great. I didn't get scared. I just laughed the whole entire time. Plus, usually they're not scaring a big, gigantic dude like me. They're probably afraid that I'm going to like sock them. But like the girls who were with me who were kind of back, I could just hear them every 5 seconds. But the thing that I hated about it was they were pumping music in that room, and it was so loud. Like it was almost to the point where it's like I have to put like earplugs in because it's so loud. Like I couldn't even think straight. And I had one student who literally is walking through the haunted house with his hands over his ears, just walking through. So it's just wild how loud those places can be. And I think that's the thing. It's more just to disorient you so the scares are good because they can't like touch you or do anything else. They just have to like jump at you, and that's the scare. But I don't know. I just thought it was a little weird and interesting how things have changed so much since I was went to haunted houses when I was a teen.
Well, not that I have like a personal stories gone wild, but like to piggyback off of your issue one thing, I was reading in the local news, Cincinnati News website yesterday on that website yesterday that there's been vandalism of churches in
Oh wow!
Cincinnati because of the whole issue one thing. So it's
Like, what are they vandalizing?
like they'll churches are either supporting or not supporting the issue, and they're making that public in their
Oh
on their
wow!
property and their churches, the church property, and then people are going and vandalizing the signs and vandalizing the churches as a result. So
Oh gosh! And then of course my big thing is maybe churches shouldn't have an issue with politics. They should stay neutral.
they
That's always
used to
been
that
my
before,
stance. Yeah, but
which
oh
I
god.
kind of agree.
Well, I mean, well, even like I think there was one time where someone actually called the church and it was a church member, and they were just saying stuff like, "You're not trying to force any type of opinion," and that's the thing. Like, our lead pastor, she's not going to be at on the office next Tuesday because she actually does the whole ballot counting. So she's not even able legally to like push her whatever her views are because she works for
Polls.
doing all that stuff. So, but she works at the polls, so you can't really be like, "Hey, I'm using my platform to say vote yes or vote no for these issues." Like she can't do that, and that's the thing. Like my son always says, "Oh, can we put a sign in our yard?" I'm like, "Absolutely not. It's not our property. It's the church's property, so I can't put anything out there." So. And I'm sure if I did, I don't think anyone would care. Like, but I'm sure there'd be a church person who would see whatever sign I put out there and say, "Hey, you shouldn't be putting signs out there." So I just don't anyway, just in case it
You should
becomes
put
an issue.
you should get a sign that says um, like Bush Cheney 2004
Oh,
or
geez.
something like super old, like or Clinton or whoever. Al
Well,
Gore.
I have one sign out there. It says a star reader lives here that I got from the public library. I did have a sign years ago when I played rugby. It was like Rocktown Rugby, the best ruck you'll ever have. And yeah, they're like, "Oh yeah, put it up to do advertise." Like, yeah, I can't put that up in my yard. I live in a church parsonage. I can't put Rocktown Rugby, the best rugby you ever have. There'd be some church people who'll be complaining to my elder board about that. Oh gosh, but yeah. So Micah, what's your story, man?
I don't have one. That was what kind of
Oh
what I was
yeah,
talking about with the
your thing
whole
was talking
past
about the
issue one in Cincinnati and how they're vandalizing churches and how I think that's crazy.
man. Good thing they weren't vandalizing churches for issue 17.
I also think
Support our public libraries.
isn't the issue one thing something about marijuana to legalizing marijuana in the state of Ohio?
No, I maybe I
That's on the ballot in November or this
is
month.
it maybe it might be issue 2 because maybe that's the whole thing about why there was a highway patrolman like talking. Now I'm very curious, but why I looked that up. Let's talk about pastor appreciation. So, Micah, you've been attending a Presbyterian church. What did they do for pastor appreciation? Did they do anything for pastor appreciation this month?
They did. I think they waited till the last Sunday of October, and they just acknowledged that they're super thankful for pastor and his wife and everything they do and everything that they do for the church and the stuff that they don't see um, happen, all the behind the scenes stuff that we do as pastors and leaders in churches that the lay people don't see. And then they gave them a gift. And I think, I want to say that we had a dinner after service for them. But yeah, they waited till the last Sunday of October to do that. And some churches, I don't know, depending on the size of churches, they'll either pick a certain Sunday, like you said, or they'll take a couple Sundays to acknowledge staff, et cetera. But I've seen it done a number of ways. Is your church, did Bexley do anything?
Yeah, we did. So actually, it's funny because we have so many different teams and so many different boards through the United Methodist Church. Like sometimes it's like, okay, who do I talk to see if anything's happening? And I think so. I talked to our business manager saying, hey, are we doing anything for pastor appreciation? I said that at the beginning of the month, and she's like, let me talk with you need to talk to board of pastoral care and relations. So I talked to them and they said, yeah, what do you think we should get? They're asking me, what do you think we should do, or what should we get, the pastor? Because I think last year they did like a spa gift certificate. So she was able to go to a spa, get a massage, all that stuff. But, she's not the type of person that's like, ooh, yeah, let me go get a massage. But I knew she liked to cook. So I actually went out and I went and got her. And since we have two services, I had to like split up the gifts into two so I could present one for the one service and one for the second service.
Or you could just give it to her, take it away, and give it to her again.
True. I mean, we could do that, but it's just like, yeah, nope. But we ended up getting her, I ended up getting her some Penzi spices. And then I also got her some like infused olive oil and some balsamic vinaigrettes, which is funny because during the 11 o'clock, which is our traditional service, she gets the bag, she's opening up, she can tell she's a bottle, and then she's hesitating to open it because she thinks that maybe it might be like a wine bottle. It's like, oh, it's olive oil. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to give you a wine bottle from the entire church. We're not Catholic. Goodness. But yeah, so no, but I think it was a good time. We got to honor her, and the kids got to write up a card, and we got to give that to her. So it's kind of like on behalf of the church, and make sure the children got to have some involvement in it. But that's kind of what we did. And we did that. And it was funny because I did that like before the end of the month, I did that. And she's like, oh, just you wait, Scott. We still have one more Sunday this month, so I'm going to get you. I'm like, okay. Never did, but that's okay. Because I'm at a point now where it's like with pastor appreciation, since I'm in an auxiliary role, I'm like, hey, I want to make sure, the lead's being taken care of in some ways. And, if I get something, if I get a card, that's great. If I don't get anything, I'm content and I'm okay with that too. Yeah.
I've also seen it done a number of ways where like they just acknowledge the lead pastor and his wife and their family, or they do the whole staff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's interesting because I think I don't know. I think that, even though you might have other pastors on staff, I mean, because technically you even have pastors who may be retired pastors or people who are ordained, but they're just like lay leaders in the church. So, you can recognize everybody. But I think for most churches, they usually kind of just hit on the lead, and very rarely do you get a lot of recognition for like your worship minister or your children's minister or your youth minister or your minister of technology, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, so yeah, and it was actually interesting because I always thought about, well, like, when did pastor appreciation like start? And I know people always interchange pastor appreciation month versus day, and I'm thinking, well, isn't it a month? And then I ended up finding a resource that talks about how originally back in 1992, Focus on the Family actually pushed for for churches to celebrate and appreciate their pastors, and Clergy Appreciation Month. And they were very adamant in pushing on it. And then from there, eventually they dedicated a day, which has become Pastor Appreciation Day, which is usually like the second Sunday of October is usually what's considered Pastor Appreciation Day, which I didn't even know that. But one thing I thought was fascinating is as of 2019, and this is probably when the article was written, that in 2019, they say that there is 458,000 ministers that are employed in the United States. 458,411 individuals are employed as clergy in the United States of America. So I thought that was fascinating. I'm sure that number has dropped.
Since, that was 2019, right?
That was 2019. So yeah, it has dropped, especially since looking at the most recent statistics from Barna. They don't really tell you how many people have quit, but they did a survey on how many of you have considered quitting full-time ministry. And in January of 2001, when they did this survey, like 29% said yes and 71% said no, as opposed to the next year from 2001 to 2002, the yeses jumped up from 29 to 42%, and the no dropped from 71% to 58%. Wow. And when you look at the main reasons why, the top three were the stress of the job, feeling lonely and isolated, and the current political divisions.
I think I would agree with all three of those.
Oh yeah, I'd agree. And the fourth one, coming in fourth place, is I am unhappy with the effect the role has had on my family.
That would probably be like two for me, or like two or three, somewhere in there for me.
So let me just read these statistics. So the stress of the job, 56% of pastors who were surveyed said it was they considered quitting because of stress. Feeling lonely and isolated, 43%. Political divisions, 38%. The effect of the negative effect it has on their family, 29%, and also falling in 29%. I'm not optimistic about the future of my church. That's also sits at 29%. And then 24% is my church is steadily declining. So those are like your top five. And then some other ones is I'm not satisfied with my job. I don't feel respected by my congregation. I don't feel equipped to do ministry. I don't have what it takes to be successful. I don't feel supported by my staff. I'm experiencing a personal crisis of faith, and I don't feel respected by those outside the church. That sits at 6%. And then, but then the second highest, or the sixth highest, is something else. That sits at 21%. Something else, or undefined, like it's something not listed on this chart. So that's pretty big too, that there's at least 21% of people who say all those options, it's not it, it's something else that makes me want to consider quitting. So yeah, that's very interesting, which again kind of goes back to why I think this month is so important, to show appreciation to clergy, because if you don't, it's almost kind of like a slap in the face. It's almost like your pastor or your pastoral staff is working, they're stressed, they're starting to feel burnout. So just having a special dinner or just a public acknowledgement from somebody in the church saying, hey, we appreciate you, we love you. Sometimes that goes a long way. Even if your church doesn't have a lot of money to give, just acknowledgement, I think, can go a long way.
Yeah.
Micah, when you were doing worship leading and everything, were you ever recognized, or did you ever get any pastor appreciation stuff when you were doing ministry?
Yeah. Like I said, every church that I worked at was different. One church I worked at, it was like they just acknowledged the pastor and his wife, and even though we have multiple staff members, they just acknowledged them. I think that they acknowledged them publicly in the service, and then they had a dinner or I don't know, social afterwards where they had like
Yeah.
cake and ice cream and stuff like that, and they had everybody come. And yeah, so that was one way of doing it. Another way, the more recent one I worked at, they did a dinner after church. They acknowledged all the pastors during the service. They prayed for them, and then they had like this big card basket for all the different pastors. And so money and gift cards, and I got like a really cool coffee cup one year, a travel mug or something like that. And in other churches, the church would just give us like a bonus in our salary, $50, $100, something like that. So it's been done differently everywhere I've been.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'd say the same thing. Like, all the different years of being at churches, um, there was always, sometimes people would give me a gift or a card or maybe a check from the church, an additional like payment.
I also don't
Sometimes,
like making things people make a big deal about me for
oh
what,
yeah,
and so for those I always cringe at those because I'm like, please don't make a big deal about me. I'm just grateful to be here.
yeah, and I feel like I'm there too. Like, I mean, I like the gifts and I think it's nice. Um, I think sometimes I think in some ways just saying like, hey, Pastor Scott, thank you so much. Even if I'm just like not, but I think it's when we have to like get up there and like parade ourselves. Like, here's Pastor Scott and here's his family. And I get it's nice, but I know for like Laura, like very uncomfortable kind of being paraded in front, especially when we had kids because our kids are so antsy anyway and they always
Yeah.
pick at each other. You don't want to have that thing where it's like, okay, here we are praying, and next thing you know, like Peter's pulling Elizabeth's hair while we're praying to support our pastoral family. Like, yeah, that's not good. Um, I remember one year I was getting ready to go to church and usually I walk to church. So I have like a little bit of a walk and I usually would go through the back door. So there's a lot of greenery that separated the parsonage from the church. And I remember one year there was a bunch of sheep. Like someone made a bunch of sheep and stick them in the ground, and then there's a sign says, we love you, Pastor Scott, from the flock. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. That's really nice. So that was really good. Like, and frankly, like I couldn't even remember like if I got like a dinner that day, if I got cards with gift cards or cash or any monetary gift for past appreciation. Like I don't remember. I just remember that. Like that was because that showed like either a handful of people or even if it was just one person who did the whole thing. Like I never knew, but I think that sort of thing would be like, oh, someone took time and care to show, hey, we love you, we appreciate you. Now, on the flip side of that, I had one experience where nothing happened. Like it was October, and that's the thing. I think that's always the thing too, because as your pastor, you go, okay, it's October. You see on Facebook, you see all your other pastors. Oh, I'm so thankful for my church. They did this. They surprised me with this. They surprised me with that. I'm so thankful. And then you're sitting there and you're like, okay, first Sunday's done. Second Sunday's done. Third Sunday's done. We're now getting to the last Sunday of the month, and you're sitting there thinking, okay, is something going to happen? But I think that's probably why they did a Pastor Appreciation Day and said, hey, it's like the second week of October, so the pastors are not waiting till the end of the month going,
So people remember.
yeah, um, true. But I remember this was just after COVID, so this was 2021. So we're still meeting, we're having churches and stuff, and I remember because Laura, one of the kids was sick, so Laura stayed home, and it was a Sunday, and we went there, we started service, we went through the whole entire service, and I come home and Laura goes, hey, I'm sorry, the kids were sick or something, so we got on late. Did anybody say anything? Did anybody say anything saying, hey, we appreciate you or anything like that? And I said, no. No one from my elder board said anything. No one from the church said anything. Um, I don't even remember if I got a card, and not just like a card from the entire church, on behalf of the entire church. Like, I don't think I got a card from anybody. And after that, I think Laura was furious.
Yeah.
And she was the one going, yeah, I think it's time for us to go. Like, it was like one of those things where it's like, yeah, I think it's time for us to go. Like, and actually, I think that was kind of like the next day. That's when I started really looking and updated my resume and really started looking for
Another
places to
job.
serve elsewhere, because it's like, you know, after going through a very tense, not only going through a very tense pandemic, but going through another tense political turmoil year, just to have a year where no one says anything to say, hey, thank you so much for loving on us. Thank you for trying to keep us moving forward in our mission, even though the world's kind of crazy right now. Like, nothing. And it was just heartbreaking. And and now, like, occasionally I'll get like maybe one or two cards from people from that church saying, hey, we appreciate you, we love you, thank you for, because I still call people, I still talk to people, I still pray with people, especially if I know that they're sick or something happened. I'll try to make sure I have time to give them a call and just check in on them. But yeah, like, to me, it's kind of like, wow, that really stung. And again, I don't care about gifts. I don't care about, I mean, they're nice, but I really don't care about that. But just simply, I think just saying, hey, we appreciate you, we love you, thank you so much for the hard work you're doing. That goes, for me, personally, for me, that goes a long way than me getting a gift card to Chili's or getting like a check in the mail for, $300 or whatnot. Like, or even if getting a check in the mail for like $25, like, you know, I think just the acknowledgement of the sacrifice and hard work that I'm trying to do for the church, or any pastor's trying to do for the church, is kind of a blessing enough, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, I don't think people realized what we went through during COVID. Like, some churches weren't able to be online. Some churches had to scramble to get online. And then, you pair that with, everything that we went through going into an election cycle. And then, for them to forget pastor appreciation on top of all that after everything you went through, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. It is crazy. And I'm surprised that, I think that's the thing. I'm surprised that when you have a church of, I think when you have a church of, especially since this has been going on since 1992 officially, or at least that's what this article's saying. I mean, pastor appreciation has been around since 1992. So at least if you've been going to the church and been a part of the church life since 1992, you probably know that every October there is a pastor appreciation month, or pastor appreciation day, or something. Sometime in October you need to take a day and appreciate those who are serving you. And yeah, and I think that's something that's very, like, even today, like, actually right now, like this afternoon, like, me and the lead are going over to someone's house who's trying to clear stuff out of their house, and we're taking plastic shelving to go put in our shelf space down in the basement to add more storage, because we have boxes and other things on the floor that need to be put on racks. So it's stuff like that where it's like, most people in the church are going to know that their pastor, their 60-year-old pastor, is going over to someone's house and moving shelving. you know, with the family minister. They're not seeing that the pastor gets an unexpected email saying, hey, my husband just passed away suddenly, and now all the work and the day that they had planned to work to finish bulletins, to finish your sermon, to do whatever, they now have to go and minister and love on someone who had just lost their spouse.
Yeah.
And probably be up to like midnight that night, or spend all day Saturday when they should be having a break, having time with their family, spending all day Saturday working to make sure their sermon's ready for the next day. Now, I don't think a lot of people know about how much stuff, like, we had people come to check our roof out to make sure our roof was good. And here's the pastor literally going through the attic and getting on top of the roof of the church, which the church is not a small church. It's about 3 stories up.
Yeah.
So you have a pastor who's on top of a 3-story roof looking at the roof with some roofers. I'm thinking, dear Lord, like, you would not catch me up there at all. So I think that's kind of the big thing that I think a lot of people need to realize is that, pastors do a lot more than just preach on a Sunday morning or pray with people who are sick or go visit people who are having surgery in the hospital or do weddings and funerals. Like, there's a lot that they do that a lot of people don't know because, frankly, you don't see it. You don't see it. And I think that's kind of important. So as we kind of wrap this episode up, for those of you who are pastors, I don't know how your pastor appreciation day or month went, but the Scott Stedman podcast would just like to say, we see you. We know that you're working. We know that you're busting your butt off. We know that you have moments where you feel like you're failing or you feel like you are unequipped or maybe unqualified to serve at your church or that capacity. But we just want to let you know that, hey, we see you. We know you're working hard. We love you. And we hope that, just always lean into Jesus, and he's going to try to give you clarity and peace of mind to be able to do your ministry effectively. So that's those are my concluding thoughts. Micah, you have any concluding thoughts to Pastor Appreciation Day?
No, just love on your pastors. I mean, seriously, it's a thankless job. It's a hard job. It's one of the most difficult jobs. Ministry is one of the most loneliest places you can be. And, you were listing off some of the stats earlier, Scott, and, my family was, when I was going through transitions in ministry in 2020, 2021, et cetera, I made my life a priority. Was trying to really just make our marriage better and be intentional that if I ever got into a ministry situation again, she came first. So, so just love your pastors, love your families, love their families, really press into the fact that they do work hard and, don't just appreciate them in October, like appreciate them all the time because they do all the hard work that you don't see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, friends, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you for listening to the Scott Stedman podcast. Hope you have enjoyed this episode. If you do, feel free to give us a review and give us whatever star rating you would like to, because that helps us be better and that helps other people find out about the show as well. If you think this episode is very insightful and helpful, please let us know. And if you are a pastor, again, we love you. And we hope you're doing well, and we hope that your people that you're serving also appreciate and showing you love this past month in October as well. So that's going to be it from us. Take care. Have a great day.